My tenant wants half his last month's rent back because he left on the 15th. The tenant is required to give notice to vacate, which is at the end of a rental term or lease period. For example, if the tenant has completed their lease term and the rent is due monthly, the tenant must give 60 days written notice to vacate the unit at the end of the rental period, which is usually at the end of the month. Check your lease to ensure you know when the rent is due and what dates that rent period covers. If the tenant is required to give 60 days written notice and the rental period is from the first of the month to the end of the month, then the tenant is responsible for the full 60 days notice period, regardless of whether or not they choose to vacate early. However, if the landlord has not received the keys prior to the end of the notice period, such as the 15th, the landlord should not expect to take possession of the unit for the purposes of doing work to ready the unit for the next resident without compensating the previous tenant. Once the tenant hands the keys in, they have returned possession of the unit to the landlord. Be careful and seek legal assistance if in doubt. If, however, the landlord is able to rent the unit early, as in prior to the end of the notice period provided by the tenant, then the landlord has an obligation to return the unused portion of the rent to the tenant that vacated. A landlord should not profit or double dip for rent within the same rental period. For example, if the tenant vacates on the 15th and the landlord rents it for the 21st, from the 21st to the end of the month, the landlord needs to return that portion of the rent to the previous tenant.